Why struggle through a post-merger integration when you can glide through it? Why deal with the PMI integration challenges when you can overcome them even before they occur? Why move slow when you can move at pace? What are the world's leading PMI experts doing right now to achieve profit-accelerating integrations? This podcast will give you all the answers to these questions and many more. My name is Dudley Peacock, and welcome to the 100 Days and Beyond podcast. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Q&A Friday morning, London time. We are sitting 9 a.m. London. Good morning. Welcome to the latest Q&A for mergers, acquisitions, professional services entities for those practitioners and those entities that operate as professional services companies. This is not specifically for mergers, acquisition, and sort of post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration practitioners and firms such as those. But I would say this particular Q&A session, this Friday morning session, is open for anybody in a professional services a role or professional services business, especially those running and developing professional services businesses. So let's quickly go through the definition. A definition of a professional services business, the way I see it, is really just a group of professionals, often with an immense amount of experience, an immense amount of education, probably a number of years under the belt, if you like, in terms of their experience, their network, as well as the wide range of clients that they've dealt with. Often professional services firms are born either as an individual or as groups of partners where you have people with professional status, with high levels of education and high levels of experience and knowledge within a particular sector that get together and form a partnership often, or they form some kind of incorporation and so on. So this Q&A is dedicated for those professional services entities that, or those individuals that run and develop professional services entities. Often what happens, as I mentioned in my previous episodes with professional services businesses, you have these professionals that may start alone or within a group of professionals. They get busier and busier, get a whole lot of clients under them, and then when they look again, they are starting to then employ people to assist. So you have then executive assistants. You might even have someone that does the bookkeeping for them, and so on. And before you know it, you've got a 10, 20, 30 person firm that is made up of a group of professionals and a, let's call it a back office staff. And then the next thing that starts to happen is that it's the generation of new work. It's a generation of new clients, new leads, and there's this constant hunger to keep people busy. I think there's also a misnomer in terms of the types of software and systems that get implemented. Many times I've seen timesheet systems that are done in retrospect, for instance. So at the end of the week, you look back and you say, oh, what did I do this week? And you try and tick off the things that can be invoiced, not measuring your effectiveness or your ability to deliver client projects. Often time is dedicated more for client work as opposed to for your own work, developing your own business. And this is a typical industry where I would say many really, really smart people get caught in that trap of working on client businesses instead of client businesses and their own businesses. So professional services businesses are fraught with potential potholes and dangers along the way. Today, I'm going to cover something that I think is massively important, and things that I've experienced over almost a 30-year career now, and that is the relationships that we build. So many times, professional services businesses are built on at least one or two core relationships. So those relationships often are maybe with the client, maybe with someone that you're doing work for, or maybe between one or two, three partners. and so on. And these relationships are either strong based on core values and deliverability and certain principles that allow it to flourish. Other times these relationships could break down. And also, when you employ people, many professional services firms expect the people that they employ to be almost as good as them. And often what happens is this sort of clone mentality reduces the ability for a professional services firm to scale, to be more efficient, and even to serve their clients better. So in the terms of a professional services environment, today I'm really want to talk about, and you're welcome to comment and you're welcome to ask questions and even disagree with me if you like. But I think relationships are the key. Now the balancing of relationships, I suppose, is the principle that I would like to share with you today. Now, often we get to a point, let's just take a client relationship with the firm or the practitioner's relationship with a client. Many times, professional services get into this habit or trap of over-delivering. In other words, as a professional service practitioner, you tend to do more than you originally agreed. You tend to do more than you should. There tends to be this question, often a question is, can't you just do that for me? Now that you're here, or now that you're busy with that, can't you just add something or just do this additional thing for us? The scope creep in terms of projects, in terms of deliverables and so on, in terms of professional services businesses, happen so many times. And if there's ever been a hole in the bucket in terms of revenue of a professional services firm, and that is that client and firm, or client and practitioner relationship, where you tend to over deliver, you tend to use up a lot of your time and energy and effort investing in the client's business. And the difficulty with professional services is that many times these are short-term relationships. So they could be 5, 10, 15, 20 months, 6, 12, 18, 24-month arrangements. They're generally not very, very long-term relationships, and they often based on either sort of an interim arrangement where it's a bit of a retainer type of base. But there are so many different models, but I think the bottom line is that the relationship between practitioner and client often is slightly skewed, with a client demanding more than was originally agreed. However, on the flip side is that sometimes the practitioner themselves are not delivering enough of the value that the client expects, or communicating well enough with the client. So there's this balance between getting it right and one of the parties losing out. So, you either get it right and it works incredibly well, or it tends to drift and dissipate. And many professional services businesses live and die by this feast and famine approach. And I think if we, in this Q&A and in the fraternity that are professional services, if we could start looking at doing things like, and I've mentioned this in previous Q&As, is starting to systemize, starting to look at creating frameworks of delivery. So frameworks of delivery are knowing what you deliver in what sequence, understanding the jobs to be done, and understanding that whole communication cycle and the rotation of work and so on. So what I try and do as a fractional CMO, for instance, is have a repeatable process. So we do a 2-year plan. We break the 2-year plan down into quarters. There are 8 quarters, in other words, 8 3-month segments in the 2-year plan. Break it down into a year. There's 4 quarters in a year. Break it down. So we're trying to see, okay, what does it look like in 2 years' time? What does it look like in a year? And then we break it down into quarters, and we say, okay, in this next quarter, what can we do? In a quarter, there are 12 weeks. In a 12-week process, there are I would say that in 12 weeks, you could, I mean, this is the way we do it, is there are 2-week segments. A 1 week is too short. 2 weeks seem to work pretty well. And if you take 12 weeks, divided by 6 gives you 2-week sprints, 6 of them. So when we do 6 2-week sprints, we are now able to take what was the longer term goal and break it down into bite-sized chunks. So at the end of every 2 weeks, we can then have some kind of KPI report. We can have let's call it a check-in, and make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of communication and so on. Now, this is where this is what the topic of today is. Let's assume that, I mean, the professional services individual is not doing what they should be doing. At what point does the client say enough is enough? On the flip side is when you are working with a client and they are not making decisions quick enough, they are not providing the information on time, the team that's been provided or that you're working with from the client is disjointed and they're not working together properly. At what point do you start managing the team, which is not really often within the brief of a professional services firm? At what point do you manage your client's team to deliver? And at what point do you say, okay, well, you know what, to get my contract continued, do I need to step in and do a lot of the work myself? Unless it's within scope, I don't think you should. But do you call it a day? Maybe do you cut the contract? Do you put it on pause? Do you do that type of thing? Do you have a stern conversation with the client? What if the client has got a mental block? What if the client suffers from a large ego, or even just suffers from legacy holding them back? There are other times when I've worked with clients that are so stuck in the day-to-day of their enterprises that they just say, you know what, I'm busy, so-and-so can do it. And those create those unfortunate circumstances where contracts often run to an end. So today's Q&A is all about that. It's all about that client and practitioner, or client and professional services firm relationship. In addition, it's also to do with employees. It's also to do with partners. You know, at what point do you see your partner? Let's say there's 2 or 3, 4 partners in a professional services firm. You've joined together. You all have, each of you have different skills and skill sets coming to the party. Everyone's excited when you start the entity, but then you have 1 or 2 individuals that start to slack, and the rest of the team have to carry. What if it's a family service, family business that's a professional services entity? You're going to have the family issues brought from home into the entity, and you could have business decisions being obstructed or interfered with because of the family dynamic. There are additional relationships that I also want to pinpoint, and those are relationships with suppliers. So you could have suppliers, people that you maybe outsource work to. It could be software suppliers. It could be anybody that provides the additional things that you add in to deliver your service as a professional services entity. There are multiple relationships that need to be managed. So today I just want to share with you maybe just a way of looking at it. And I think all of us at some stage in our careers have done mind mapping. We've done, even just scribbled with a pencil and a piece of paper, and these days it's all done online, or not all, but depends on who you are. But instead of doing an organigram or a business plan or something like that, focus this coming week. And you would know that if you've been following my Q&As every week, there's something that I'm suggesting that you look at doing on a weekly basis. What I'm suggesting today is look at a relationships map. Plug into your, let's call it your mind map, all the different individuals, companies, employees, I mean, you name it, across your mind map, and start doing an analysis of these different relationships. What are they? What are the conditions? What are the expectations? What are the different aspects of those relationships? Are they necessary relationships? Now, I can just, in this last 12, 18 months, I can think of a number of relationships that I've personally ended or walked away from because they were just not functioning. There are other circumstances that I can share with you also, where I've had, where we, myself and whoever the individual, could be employee, could be a partner, could be a client, where we've mutually agreed that whatever the relationship is that we have is no longer functioning as it should. And it's better that way. It's amicable, and we agree that there's no more value exchange. So coming back to the core principle of a professional services business, often it's about the value exchange. It's about doing that, adding value and being paid for the value, or adding value and getting enjoyment out of the value because you are doing it for additional reasons. Now, there are so many different types of relationships, and when you start mapping them out, start getting a relationships map. And I'm not talking about personal relationships. This doesn't come within the remit of this Q&A, and I'm by no means going to put myself out there as a personal relationships expert. But what I am talking about are business relationships, people that you employ, people that that you do business with, suppliers, even your landlord if you're renting premises. I mean, what kind of relationships do you have? Do you have a hit and run relationship or hit and miss relationship? And then the next part of the exercise would be to start saying, okay, do I need to strengthen that relationship? Do I need to cut that relationship? Do I need to prune or adjust that relationship? With each one of those, and find those key relationships that are, let's call it, you can start grouping them in terms of some of the relationships you have could be referral based relationships. So those particular people that you know might not directly provide revenue. In other words, you have contracts with them and you're delivering a service, but because of the network, they are assisting you in referring other clients and other work to you or to your firm. Those are referral networks, if you like. And for me, in a professional services environment, those are one of the places where you're building your pond, if you like, of referrers, of potential clients, of potential future relationships. That is one aspect. I mean, if we look at employees, what are you doing to not just have that transactional relationship, pay salary, get delivered daily, weekly, monthly, what you are paying for on a job description? What about suppliers? Are you engaging them? Are they engaging you? Are they being part of a solution for you? Are they providing new information, new opportunities, and are they providing potentially improvements in their service delivery? Or is it that they do exactly the same as potentially you doing, is you sign a contract, you go into delivery mode, and you don't go into delivery and enhancement mode. So I'm not talking about over delivering. I'm talking about providing additional opportunities to increase or to improve additional offers that you can make. Now, it's been proven, and if I look across the software and SaaS industries and so on, that when you are delivering 2 or more services or some kind of products on a regular basis to a client, the lifetime value of a client increases. So what tends to happen with professional services businesses is that you tend to do it one contract at a time. You tend to agree an engagement, and then you then go and deliver on that engagement. And when the engagement either runs out in terms of time, or the project comes to completion, or it literally falls flat because maybe there's some breakdown in relationship, then there's no more client, there's no more customer. It comes to an end. If you have got the ability and you sit back and start thinking in terms of your client relationships, is there a way that I could break it down into smaller pieces, what I deliver, and I have component parts that are, say, short term, that have a start, middle, and end, and other component parts that are evergreen, they carry on, and some people call it UFN, or until further notice. Are there parts of it that I can do? So is there a way I could do both service maybe and provide a product or a service level agreement, or some kind of ongoing check-in or advisory work? So in other words, you could have maybe a main contract, consulting contract, and an additional contract that, should this main one cease, that the other one continues because you found a reason why it should. You should be literally selling 2 or 3 or 4 products that have different lifespans. Professional services firms fall into this trap all the time. So it's all about that relationship and about understanding your business model and understanding that relationships come to an end. Every relationship has a time span. It has a time span of usefulness. It has a time span in which the job is done, and even if it's a perfect job, when the job is complete, the project is complete, that is the end of the relationship. I mean, you take estate agents or realty agents that sell property and so on. This is where they make the big mistake, and this is a massive mistake. Is they go and they get listings, and they go and they put a deal together, do the contract, do the exchange of contracts. A deal is consummated. The buyer and the seller are happy. Buyers got their property, sellers got their money. Mortgage lenders got their additional loan, and etc. And people have been paid commissions and so on. And then the contract comes to an end. That's an example of a one-hit wonder. If you're in that sort of space, I mean, can you think of any additional things you can be doing that will enhance and provide a longer term nature to that relationship? It's incredibly hard to get a new relationship, to build a new relationship. It is a lot easier to think of ways to extend that relationship. So, an estate agent could be thinking about maybe they could joint venture with a home services, insurance, and other, where we all know that most people buy a home, they live in the home 3, 5, 7 years, and then life changes, or they get changed jobs, or there's some other reason why you would leave your home. And I mean, it could be things like termite inspections, it could be anything. But joint venture, find alternatives, find additional things, find things that can maintain the relationship, or a reason to maintain relationship. So when the house comes up for sale again, that you're the person there that gets the listing again, and so on. So that's an example of a professional services. And I don't know if you can call it professional services, but basically it's a person with a skill, and they are putting people together. But if you look at mergers, acquisitions, post-merger integration work, and so on, again, it comes down to, let's say I take on a leadership position within a project. There's been an acquisition. It's a private equity firm. I've taken on a project. I've taken on the leadership position. I'm working through my first day one, my first 100 days, my first few projects are busy finishing off. What am I doing to continue the relationship with the private equity firm? What am I doing to continue the relationship with the target company? Am I adding additional services and products and things that I could be either joint venturing or adding to my own services and product stack? Okay, so that's the overall sort of view of professional services and relationships. There is, however, there's this caveat, and I think what we have to do is we have to get this balance right, and it's not always that easy. And that is when you engage with a client, for instance, when you're engaging with an employee or a partner or a potential additional member of your professional services team, and you're finding that things are not quite in sync, you don't share roughly the same values, there are certain things that you weren't aware of before that have now come up and now you're becoming aware of. If there's one thing that I've learned is to cut, and to cut quickly. Don't hang on to a relationship that is not meant to work. And there's no slight on either of the individuals or companies or whoever are involved, but cut, and cut quickly. If you get involved with a client relationship and it's just not working, the onus is on you as a professional from a professional services firm. The onus is on you to call it out, to have the discussion, have the really frank discussion with a client, with a client's team, with all the people involved, and be very, very specific and direct. Be deliberate in your relationship and your relationship building. But if it's not working, much rather have that escape clause or that get out clause, and rather get that relationship cut. The difficulty is, I mean, the same thing with employees, the same thing with suppliers. If it's not working, don't hang in there, because it's far more costly to hang in than what it is to cut, and cut early, and rather put all your attention and effort into things that are working, or to go back to the drawing board and say, let me analyze, let me have a re-look at what it is that I'm offering, the way I'm doing my work, the way I'm reacting to others, the way that I'm engaging and who I'm engaging with. So again, it comes back to that relationships map. Understand who you've built around you as your network, your relationship network, and then start analyzing each one of them. This is, I think, the key to success and scaling within a professional services environment. You cannot scale these days by employing every person that you need to deliver the work. The only way really to scale these days, and especially with the movement of people, the cost of people, the cost of salaries and overhead and so on, and also the up and down nature of work within a professional services firm, it's incredibly difficult to map out, let's call it a fixed employee journey, if you like, or a fixed supplier journey, or fixed client journey. There are going to be times when it'll be up, and there'll be times it'll be down. So when you are looking at your relationships map, look at those that are the strongest. You might want to use, let's call it green lines for the strongest ones. You might want to use amber or yellow lines for those that need work, and red lines maybe for those that that are in the danger zone, that maybe need to have a frank conversation, a very direct conversation, or might need to be cut. And if there's a way to scale your professional services business, this would be it. It would be to go and map out your relationships and say, okay, where are the gaps? Where do I need relationships? And I've not actually put enough time in building different relationships. So in order to scale a professional services business, you have two choices. One is to employ people. The other is to outsource people. Maybe the third is to joint venture with other firms that do certain things incredibly brilliantly. So I'll give you an example. So as a fractional CMO, what I will do is I'll set up the entire leadership framework. But there are certain elements that I know that there are certain people or companies out there that are incredibly brilliant at one specific thing. Let's take search engine optimization, for instance. For certain niches, they might be incredibly strong. They might know that niche. They might know the keywords that work incredibly well for very, very specific niches. And if I try and learn and try and understand and experiment, I'll be wasting my clients' money and time. I'll be wasting my time and my life trying to learn a skill that's not necessary. So I can go and joint venture rather with an entity or a person or subcontract an element of work that someone else can do far better, quicker, and cheaper than I can ever do. So search engine optimization, paid advertising, copywriting, all that type of thing. As a fractional CMO, I would look to saying, okay, where am I really strong? I'm strong at putting together the leadership. I'm strong at doing the strategic work. I'm putting the plans together and knowing what has to be done in what sequence. I also have a deep and rich understanding of professional services because I've owned professional services businesses for almost 30 years. I've grown and established and sold professional services businesses in my own capacity. And in terms of M&A work and so on, these days it's becoming niche, and niche within a niche, and niche within a niche within a niche, and your specialism is becoming so critical. So if you in an M&A position, I mean, I was explaining yesterday to someone that even within the integration space, if you're looking at post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration work, it has now become so fragmented in that you need to specialize. You can't be a generalist PMI, post-merger integration practitioner, as much as you could in the past. You need to select a sector, industrial or engineering, as opposed to SaaS software, as opposed to agriculture. I interviewed in my podcast, and I do weekly podcasts for those of you that watch podcasts, from people that specialize just in agriculture, but as a subsector, they would be involved in, let's say, beef, or they would be involved in cannabis was the one. If you look at manufacturing, I mean, you could be manufacturing electronic component parts as opposed to ball bearings and large scale industrial equipment. Big differences in manufacturing, in markets, and so on. So if you're a post-merger integration practitioner, you want to niche that down, and then you also want to become good at something. So good at leadership, good at understanding culture, human resources, etc. And I know there's this word agnostic that comes up from time to time. And you may be, let's call it industry agnostic, but you cannot be skill agnostic. You cannot be all things to all men, if that makes sense. You've got to select what is that special source, that special value add that you bring. So unless you know what that is, unless you can actually do that, unless you explain that and contract that out, your relationship ability would become incredibly difficult. Take employees, for instance. If you don't truly know your skill set, where you sit, what your deliverable is, what your repeatable process is, what your framework is that you deliver, it's very, very difficult to employ people to actually do the work that you can't get to, don't want to, or don't have the skill to do. Professional services firm owners have this sort of Superman mentality or Superwoman mentality that they can do everything, and in fact, that's not really realistic, and it doesn't serve the client's properly. But if we go back to post-merger integration work or post-acquisition integration work, that's been subdivided. And I just spoke about industry. Within the different industries, I mean, if you take financial services and banking and so on, there's now, it's not just about integrations, bringing businesses together. It's in addition to that, there are things like separations. It's breaking businesses up. It's creating a completely different subsector of PMIs, of post-merger integration practitioners that only focus on separations. It's like the law fraternity, where you have certain lawyers are good at conveyancing properties, others are good at criminal law, others are good at divorce law, etc. The same thing happens with professional services firms. You've got to select that niche and then sub niche within that niche, etc. And it's just going to get more and more and more difficult within the professional services space. The beauty about professional services, it's got a very low barrier to entry. You can literally start a professional services business tomorrow. I mean, you probably don't even need business cards or a website. You can literally just say, hey, I'm an XYZ professional. Would you like to hire me? Here is here's a contract on a napkin, on a serviette, as some people would call it, or a little scribbled piece of paper, and let's get going. Let's get working. I mean, it's it's as simple as that. Or you could be very, 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 very complex. But the barrier to entry to going into professional services is very, very low. You don't need to buy massive amounts of equipment, etc., which means that people flood towards professional services as a means to earn an income. But the difficulty there is, how do you stand out above everyone else? And I think the number one thing that you should be looking at, no matter where you are, whether it's early in your professional services business or your career, or you much later on, is to look at your relationships, map it out, understand who's good for you, who needs to be worked on, and who needs to be cut hard, and be very, very specific, because in professional services, time is absolutely one of those key elements that you just never get back. Time can be wasted on so many unnecessary relationships, conversations, meetings, emails, messaging. It can just be absolutely, it can drive you crazy. And in fact, it can destroy a year or 2 or 3 years worth of productivity, going down the wrong route and not cutting early. So if we look at the post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration space, we're looking at people that are not just doing mergers in particular industries, but we're also looking at separations, but we're also looking at carve-outs. We're looking at companies that are employed either by a corporate, so it's a corporate acquirer, so they're going to be niching themselves within their corporate team. If you're private equity, you're going to be doing the same. You might be a small fund, a medium fund, a large fund. I mean, there are so many different variations to a professional services firm, but there's a constant, and the constant is literally those relationships. Okay, so we come to the end of today's Q&A. You're welcome to put comments in the chat boxes below. I'll answer all the questions. You're welcome also to drop me an email, to come online at some stage. If you're a PMI, you're a PMI expert, or if you're a marketing expert and you work for a company and you're looking for marketing advice, expertise, or even just someone to bounce things off, please talk to me. Or if you're looking for anything around the technology side of things of business, so business management software, ERP systems, and even just the understanding the business analytics, the business workflows and processes and things that are required to create a business that functions properly. Professional services firms, however, are businesses just like any other business. And they all require systems, processes, procedures, people, and really good relationships. And the takeaway for this coming week is do your map, understand who you need to build up, understand who you need to address and make decisions on, and understand who you need to cut and cut quickly so that you can get on with tidying up and obviously scaling up your professional services firm. Thank you very, very much. Have a super weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday, 9 a.m. London time. Soon the clocks will be changing. We're having an incredibly hot summer. But as winter is almost knocking on the door, we're going into autumn soon. The clocks will start to change in October sometime, so it will be an hour earlier for those. We'll go back into GMT, not GMT +1 or UTC, as some people call it, currently UTC +1. But please, you're welcome to join us every week, 9 a.m. British summertime right now. Every week, 9 o'clock, for half an hour or 45 minutes, and post any questions during the week, and I'm willing to open and answer it. This session is about professional services firms, how to grow, scale, and develop your firm. Have a super weekend, and we'll chat to you next week. Goodbye. Hi, everybody. This is Dudley again, and if you need help with a future or existing post-merger integration, I want to invite you to arrange a free, no obligation meeting with us. During the meeting, we'll find out exactly what you need, what your challenges are, and we'll explain how our unique PMI slipstream method can help you. Simply call us or visit mergerintegration.co.uk. That's mergerintegration.co.uk, or come to our website, skillfulpursuit.com.